Fool's Gold. The Past. Pharos 9, post-Istvan, during the early campaigns of the Iron Hands remnants. Caden Ferrisborn sat on the beach, leaning against a black basalt boulder. The sand beneath him was obsidian, streaked with layers of magnetite and ilmenite, giving the beach a slick, oily sheen. The setting sun cast its rust-red light across the churning sea, where 40 miles or more to the west, a volcano continued to belch smoke into the blood-orange sky. It had been erupting since the moment they made planetfall. He picked up a small stone, black, weighty, flecked with iron. His helmet's lens identified it as mostly magnetite, probably valuable to someone somewhere. He tossed it into the sea. It hit with a dull plunk, its wake forming ripples that were instantly devoured by the next cresting wave. That seemed oddly poetic. They had made a ripple in the sea of war, and the wave had swallowed it without pause. Up on the outcrop, the Iron Thane was gesturing with his augmetic hand in tight, irritated motions, negative responses to the arguments of the fleet captains surrounding him. Caden recognized the captain of the Lament of Desire. He was speaking with heat, jabbing toward the sea with an armored finger. The other shipmasters nodded, siding with him. Whatever they were arguing about, Caden didn't know and didn't care. They had made planetfall on Pharos 9 2 weeks ago, following reports of a Luna Wolves garrison on the volcanic world. The Iron Thane, in a desperate attempt to reclaim initiative after Ferrus Manus's death, had gathered what Iron Hands he could, fragments, outcast survivors, and led the remnants of his fleet here with no reconnaissance and no solid intel. Oh, there had been Luna Wolves, all right, a handful, but the real enemy had been waiting, the Word-Bearers. From their temple complexes built into the volcanic calderas, they had opened portals into the immaterium. Daemons poured out in their thousands. A quarter of the Iron Hands had been annihilated in hours. All they had to show for it was one ragged squad of Luna Wolves taken alive, 50 Vox emitters playing pre-recorded responses, and more than 1,000 word-bearers supported by cultists, miners and colonists twisted by new faith into shrieking vessels of chaos undivided. The Iron Thane looked like a fool, a failed tactician, and the Imperial truth looked like a lie. Sadon tossed another stone. Behind him, he heard the soft crunch of obsidian sand under armored boots. He turned. 2 figures were approaching, having broken off from the argument on the outcrop. One was the Praetor of the 7th, tall and grim, with one shoulder plate bare and silvered in reinforcement plating. The other was cloaked, bearing a tall staff that caught the last of the sunlight and scattered it like a flare. A librarian. Caden watched them approach with weary interest. The Librarius had been disbanded at Nicaea, but reintroduced within weeks of the heresy. The warp could no longer be ignored. The Iron Hands had always rejected psychers, preferring logic and the perfection of machine over the sorcery of the mind. But some psychers had been retained in secret, and in the wake of Ferrus Manus's death, even the most dogmatic leaders were forced to admit that necessity outweighed tradition. The Iron Thane had reinstated several librarians, quietly, carefully. Whether other Iron Hands factions had done the same, Caden didn't know. He saw only another truth turn to ash. He watched as his company captain jogged over to greet the 2 newcomers. Sidon remained seated until the Praetor looked toward him and beckoned. He rose slowly, brushing the black sand from his armor, and trudged toward them. The discussion was already heated. "We should strike at Eregius while the trail is hot," the captain was saying. "We know the traitors are there. We move before they dig in. If the shipmasters are cowards, then we take the bulk transports ourselves." The librarian shook his head. "Rumors. No better than Pharos 9. Another trap." "Shut your vox, warp tongue," the captain snapped. The psyker raised his hand, calm but firm. "We have orders." "Orders?" the captain barked. "We had orders to come here. We had orders to fight Luna Wolves. There were 5. He held up a clenched gauntlet. 5. And you didn't see it, librarian. Or did you see and let us walk into a trap?" "Calm yourself, Centurion," the librarian said, unmoved. "Our divinations were blinded by the Neverborn, just as your Auspex was blinded by scrap code. We fight the same war. You merely walk a different path through it." The captain's fury boiled over. "Or you consorted with the Neverborn and led us here." The librarian's fingers flicked in a subtle gesture. The Centurion was yanked backward as if seized by an invisible chain. He hit the surf hard, sending up a fan of black water, his shout of rage turning to a wet cough. 2 iron hands ran to help him, but he bellowed them away. "Your centurion is very emotional," the librarian observed dryly. The praetor remained silent. His helmet turned toward Caden. "Vox all lieutenants of the 7th, I want them assembled here now." Caden drew out his Vox link and slotted in the proper encoder. "Some are still waiting to be relieved by the 15th, he warned. The praetor waved the concern away. His gaze drifted to the outcrop, where the Iron Thane still argued with the fleet. The sun was almost gone now, the volcano's plume glowing dull red in the fading light. "The captains are afraid," the praetor said quietly. The words hung in the salt air like mist, clinging to everything left unsaid. The consul tilted his head slightly, his helm catching the dying light. "We lost 1/3 of the fleet," he replied, "and 1/3 of our strength with it. They don't fear battle, they fear waste. The Iron Thane is hot-blooded. He rushed in, and this is what it got him." He gestured to the surf, where armored shapes rolled gently with the tide, great steel bodies tossed like driftwood. The sigils of the 7th, scorched and half-submerged, gleamed dully in the low sun. The armor was the same color as the beach now, blackened by flame, stained by ash. The sea licked at them like some carrion thing. Another distant rumble rolled across the shore. A new plume of smoke curled from the volcano's western ridge, climbing the sky like a black serpent. The praetor turned his eyes to Caedon. He started, suddenly reminded of his task. "Yes, Lord," he said, fumbling to link the Vox to his command channel. One by one, he called the officers of the 7th to muster. 3 of the responses came from junior officers. Their lieutenants were dead. Caedon knew each voice by rhythm and inflection. He could tell one warrior from another by the static between clicks, by the pause before transmission. He had served with these men for over a century. Now, more than half the voices were strangers, and the heresy was only months old. When the last confirmation came through, he closed the channel and stood to attention. The captain was gone, presumably to what remained of the armory, to organize what few weapons they had left. The praetor remained still, eyes on the sea. The consul watched the gathering of men further up the slope, his gaze trailing to the surf line. Caedon followed his eyes. A figure was approaching, stepping around the bodies as though trying not to disturb the dead. It was the shipmaster, Captain Favonius Abutus of the Lament of Desire. His cloak dragged wet behind him, the bottom edges dark with brine. The consul muttered, "Looks like we have a ride." "If we're to get that far," the praetor said, "we'll need firepower." The consul didn't look away. "I suspect speed was what the Iron Thane had in mind." The praetor's voice was flint. "We are iron hands, we face the enemy head-on, not slinking past them like cowards." The consul's red lenses flicked toward the bodies in the waves. "Yes," he said, "I can see that." The praetor turned sharply, eyes narrowing behind his helm, but he said nothing. Captain Abutus reached them and stopped just shy of the tide line. His face was grim, beard slick with salt. He looked down at the fallen in the surf, then up to the praetor. "Damn fool," he spat. "How did that man ever become Iron Thane?" The praetor replied without venom. He stepped forward. Abutus snorted, pushing his cloak back over one shoulder. "Then it looks like we're both in this together." "You, me, my men, your crew," the praetor said. "We won't be alone in our service." Abutus cast a glance at the librarian. "Your brothers are already boarding the Lament. I've ordered my engineers to prepare a shielded chamber. Your kind'll be safe there." "That will do." "Ship Captain Favonius Abutus," the consul replied, tone neutral. "And do not fret. If the Iron Thane is correct, this mission will end the rivalry before year's end." Abutus studied the librarian for a moment. "Or we all fall chasing iron pyrite," he snapped, then turned sharply back toward the surf. "The Lament will make way once you're aboard. 3 captains will follow. Emperor help us if it's their end too." He stalked off, the water parting around his boots. "What did he mean?" Caedon asked, his voice quiet. The praetor looked at him for a long moment, then said nothing. He turned and walked away. Caedon stood in silence, alone now but for the consul. The librarian stepped to his side, staff planted in the black sand. He didn't look at Caedon as he spoke. "This errand we embark on," he said softly, watching the volcano's smoke mix with the clouds, "it's fool's gold." he turned and walked up the beach, leaving Kadon with the corpses in the surf and the endless sound of the waves.